Hey, it's Chico, and in today's video, I'm going to talk to you about negotiating with sellers, because it doesn't matter how great of a marketing you have, how great your postcards are, if you're using Facebook ads like I teach you, or any other methodology. It does not matter, because at the end of the day, where the rubber meets the road is when you get on the phone with a property owner, and at that point that's where the money is made. And a lot of real estate investors think and put a lot of emphasis, which you should, on the marketing, but then they don't realize that the marketing is just the first part of the process. Your ability to negotiate with sellers, your ability to get sellers to see your side of the equation and be able to get the property for the price that you need, that is by far the most important thing. I would rather you have less leads and a greater ability to talk to sellers than the flip side, because you could have all the leads in the world, but if you can't close a door, you ain't gonna close a deal. So in this video, I'm gonna lay out my strategy and my timeline and be able to share with you specifically how a seller conversation should go and all the different stages. And that way you are better prepared to take advantage of the leads you generate and be able to close some deals. If you don't know me by now, my name is Cris Chico. I am the creator of the digital bandit sign technique for helping you find motivated sellers on Facebook. I'm also considered the godfather of virtual wholesaling. Back in, 2003 or 4, I created the concept of virtual wholesaling. Back when there was no Google Street View, when there was nothing. It was really hard back then. You guys got it easy. If you're interested in learning how to find and flip properties anywhere in the USA using only your cell phone and a laptop, using my digital bandit sign technique, make sure that you click on the link to the description, or you can also go to flipanywhere.com. Go to flipanywhere.com and you can get access to my training. It shows you how I do that. Let's get on with the show, shall we? All right, so I got my fancy clipboard here, and we are first going to establish the timeline, first of all, for our entire seller conversation here. We'll call this here the beginning. That's our initial conversation with the seller, and that is the end conversation right here with the seller. Now, the end conversation signifies us getting a contract signed by the seller and agreed upon price. Here is the very, very beginning of the conversation. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that we cover, because I'm going to cover specifically what happens throughout this timeline here, and also some guiding principles. Now, let's talk about at the beginning of the conversation here we'll call it at 0. You're getting on the phone with a seller for the first time. I believe in three tenets that you need to be able to establish right at this first conversation with the property owner. And these come from, I didn't invent these come from Mr. Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. I know, he got into trouble with some stuff, and however, he is a sales animal. I think he's the best sales trainer so far, by far. So if he can teach like 18-year-olds to sell you worthless penny stocks, then you can certainly use his strategies to help you in real estate investing. Now, he says there's 3 things that you have to establish. Now, first of all, the underlying equation here is the fact that I'm going to put here 90%. 90% of communication, okay, is nonverbal. Nonverbal. What does that mean? That means that it's not the words you say, but it's how you say those words that make the difference. Because you could have 2 people saying the exact same thing, and they each of them get a significantly different result, and that is because of the fact that there's a lot of nonverbal communication. Because what you want to happen is, let's say that a seller is talking with a bunch of different investors, and every time he talks to an investor, he gets off the phone with them and he says, they all say the same thing, and he gets off the phone with them and he says to himself, that guy, that gal, they were a bozo. I don't think they know what they're doing. I think they're full of crap. And then they get on the phone with you. And after they get on the phone with you, they look at their spouse and they say, honey, that guy, he knows what he's doing. I think that guy's going to buy our house. I think that guy has his shit together. Let's go with that guy. That's what you want. Because many times, again, it's not what the words you're saying, but how you're saying that makes a difference. So one of the things that Jordan Belfort says in the beginning of a conversation is you need the person on the other line to think of these three things in regards to you. Number one is that you're sharp as a tack. You are a figure of authority and enthusiastic as hell. Sharp as a tack, figure of authority, enthusiastic as hell. You have to think about the fact that most people are in a trance all day. Everybody's going about their normal everyday lives on autopilot. If they get a phone call, they pick up the phone and they're just expecting what they're expecting every single day. Maybe they're expecting some Indian telemarketer or somebody from the Philippines calling them, a robocalling, or whatever's going on in their lives. And so what your objective is, you've got to grab them, you've got to get a hold of their attention, you got them get them to stand up and say, whoa, this call is a little different. This person is a little bit different than I've experienced before. That's what you have to accomplish when you first get on the phone with anybody, and specifically a property owner. Now, when we begin this conversation, we always are going to be calling them by their first name. I always call everybody by their first name. Don't ask for permission to call somebody by their first name. Don't say Mrs. Jones, just you call everybody by their first name. By the way, if somebody has a weird name, make extreme effort to see if you can pronounce it properly. Nothing is worse than continually mispronouncing somebody's name and not giving a damn about it, because they know you don't give a damn about it, and they're not going to give a damn about you. So now when I talk about sharp as a tack, figure of authority, enthusiastic as hell, it's that first 10 seconds of the conversation right here. That's it. You're looking for their ears to perk up and for them to say, you know what? I got to listen to what this person has to say. Also, we never want to say when we call somebody on the phone, hey, can I speak with John? Hi, is John there? No, you don't do that. You always assume that the person that answers the phone is the person you want to speak with. Always. And I'll tell you how to do that in just a second. But, back in the days when we had, a house with a phone and everybody's, and there were no cell phones, you would always ask, hey, is this John, or may I speak with John? But nowadays, the person that you want is the person answering the phone, and that is what you're going to focus on. That's the person that you're going to assume that you're speaking with them. Now, in addition to this, sharp as a tack, figure of authority, enthusiastic as hell, then we are also going to ask for 3 yeses. Yes, yes, yes. Okay? We want them to be able to we want to be able to establish this and create a cadence to the point that now we're going to have a conversation with them. So how does a conversation start? Starts like this. Hey, is John? Is this John? John. Like, you just assume that it's him. John, is this John? And they're like, yeah. And then you say, hey, John, it's Cris from Saw Your Florida Home today. Then you go into the 3 questions, right? And the 3 questions are 3 things that you know they're going to say yes to. And the 3 easy questions is, especially somebody is, say, calling me from a Facebook ad. Let's say that somebody's calling me from somebody submitted their form in a Facebook ad. So I'm going to say, hey, John, is this John? John, hey, John, it's Cris from SellYourFloridaHomeToday.com. You saw my ad? So I'm going to ask him 3 things. You saw my post on Facebook about me wanting to buy a few properties this month, and you filled out the information. Does that ring a bell? And they go, yeah, it does ring a bell. Okay, great. So again, those 3 questions are there. Right there, those 3 questions. Yes, yes, yes. So again, sharp, figure of authority, enthusiastic as hell. Got to have some pop in your voice, okay? Stand up, drink some coffee, do whatever. Authority doesn't mean that you have to know anything. You have to sound like you know what you're doing. You got to sound like you got your crap together, and you got to be sharp. No meandering, not like, oh, okay, John, yeah, no, none of that. You got to be sharp. John, hey, John, it's Cris from SellYourFloridaHomeToday.com. You saw me on Facebook the other day? I was asking about buying a few properties. You filled out the form? Does that ring a bell? Yeah, it does ring a bell. Okay, great. And then now you move on to the next part of the call. So what's the next part of the call? Now we're going to then get into the part of getting additional information. Now I'm cutting this. I'm trying to be as thorough as I can in the time that we have allotted here. I have a whole training on this. But now we've established ourselves as a figure of authority, Sharpest Attack, and then ask the 3 questions. I say, great. Well, you know what, John, if you've got 60 seconds, I'd love to get some information about the property to see if it's something that might work for us. Got a minute? And then now they say yes. Okay. So then now we go into fact finding, right? And fact finding is now we're going to be asking a series of questions to the seller. All right, in order to, a couple things. We want to establish motivation. We want to be able to establish the fact that, hey, what type of property they have, what their situation is, and also potentially price, right? So let's say that this is the block of time right here that now we're discussing with them that particular property. And there's a lot to go on here. So I'm actually going to save this part of the conversation for another video because I could just do an entire video just on this. And again, our objective here, so let's say, for example, we get a lot of information about the property, and then we also want to make our initial offer. I won't leave you hanging. I'm going to give you some tips on how to make that offer to that way the seller isn't upset at you or isn't mad at you, and to minimize that. But we want to be able to establish a price on this first conversation, or at least throw a price at them that then now you have an idea of where they stand. Now, typically, if we look at this timeline of the conversation, I typically like to ask for the price somewhere at the beginning part of this, and then that gives me a chance that if they don't give me a price, then I can also ask again a second time in the context of this conversation. Now, we're going to get, once we're finished with this conversation, we are going to get to the point where we are going to be making an offer on the property. All right. Now, I'm going to put this as a gap here. Sometimes you might be able to make an offer right from here to here. Other times you may have this gap here where you tell the owner, let me do some research, let me call you back, and let me see what I can do. All right. Either way, some of you may skip that depending on how familiar you are with the deals, etc. And then now you get to the point where you're going to be making an offer. Now, keep in mind, this is very, very, very important. Okay. When you make an offer, all right, more than likely, the seller is going to say no. 95% of the time, the seller is no. That is the starting point. Yes, I told you that, yeah, the starting point is here, but I lied to you. That's not the starting point. This is just dinner. This is just coffee. This is this here, right here. The minute they say no the first time, that's when the game begins. That is when the process of selling begins. This is all getting you set up, putting them in the right frame of mind, letting them know that you're sharp as a tack, figure of authority, enthusiastic as hell. You know what you're doing. You've having a great conversation, and you get to the point where now you've made them an offer, and they said, hell no, I ain't going to sell my house for that price. What are you, crazy? And at that point now, that's when the conversation begins to get us to this point. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to have to do another video just on this part. We got this part and we got this part. But let me tell you a couple things about making the offer. Now, what I like to do is I like to make it so that the offer is never my fault. They cannot be mad at me. How is it that they cannot be mad at me? They cannot be mad at me because my offer is based on circumstances that are completely outside of my control. Like, for example, number one, the market. All right. Number two, other sellers, right? Other sellers. And number three is my funding sources. Okay. What do I mean by this? When I make an offer to the seller, I'm not going to tell the seller, hey, Mr. Seller, I am going to be offering you $50,000, okay, below market, $50,000 for your property. And here's my offer to you. Here's what I think the property is worth. No, you don't want to phrase it that way. Because the offer is based on, you know what, Mr. Seller, based on what other sellers, you know, I'm so excited that we're speaking today because we've gotten a lot of inquiries. But your property looks like exactly the type of property that we'd be looking to buy. Now, I got to tell you that in terms of price, many of the sellers that we spoke with in the area, We have a couple opportunities to buy a few properties at or around the $45,000 price point. That's what we've been offered these deals at. However, I think yours is in a much better condition, so we could do a little bit better than the 45 that these other sellers are offering us their properties. So they can't fault you. You're just basically saying, look, all these other sellers, they're selling their properties for $45,000 or $40,000. All right. However, I think yours is better, so I'm going to offer you a little bit more. But it's not my fault that these people are selling like this. That's not my fault. Because if you want $100,000, I'll just buy one of these. But I like yours better, so maybe I'd like to buy yours instead. All right, the market, based on the market and what's happening out there in the marketplace right now, the most that we could offer you is X, right? Another is funding sources. You know what, Mr. Seller, based on Mr. Seller, luckily we don't go out and get a bank loan or go to Chase or go to Bank of America and get a property loan from them. We deal with private funding sources that basically will just write us a check. They just want to make sure that the house isn't falling down or it's not going to just disappear when the next windstorm comes. However, they give us the money based on the neighborhood and what houses are going for in that particular area. And so based on the most recent sales and the most recent activity and what we bought other properties for and what other sellers are offering us their properties for, it looks like those numbers are going to end up being somewhere between $40,000 to $45,000. Would that work for you? And so in other words, what we're doing is we are saying to them that, look, it's not our fault that these market conditions and these situations exist that force us to make an offer of this range on your property. This is not me. This is what circumstances that are completely outside of my control. And that's how we phrase that offer. And what happens is that they're always going to say no. And now, this is again from Jordan Belfort's straight line method, is if you think about it, this is the straight line. This is the line that you are going to move the dialogue of the seller step by step, methodically, to the point where they say yes to your offer. However, this is the line that you're looking to pass, that you're looking to take the conversation through. However, the conversation weaves in and out. And the weaving in and out are the different nuances of the conversation, the objections that they might give you when things move off track in the conversation, etc. And so then now you have to keep that line of communication moving in that direction. And there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that you understand. I'm going to go here to this side here of my clipboard. And if we take a look at, and this be the conversation that we're going to have with the seller. If you look at this line as the conversation that we're having with the sellers here, right? This line is here. There's a principle that I want you to keep in mind, is that keeping your powder dry. I'm going to just put powder dry. What that means is this. If a seller is going to do business with you, there's a lot of reasons why they could do business with you. Mr. Seller, I can buy the property as is. I can buy with the tenants there. I can buy it and close relatively quickly. I can handle all the title work. I can blah, blah, blah. And there's a variety of different reasons. However, you don't want to say to the owner, for example, as an example conversation, I make you an offer of $50,000. You say, you are crazy. I would never sell my property for that price. Some of you might say, well, we can do this. We can do this. We can do that. We can do this. And then, like 10 things. And you hit them rapid fire. And they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then they say no. And then what do you have? You have nothing, because you've got no more bullets in your objection handling gun, right? And because you no longer have any powder. What you have to do is you have to think about the objections that you're going to overcome, how you're going to overcome them, but you got to nudge them one at a time. And so, for example, in that example, if you say, hey, Mr. Seller, here's blah, 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 50,000, they say, no, hell no. I said, and you know what, Mr. Seller, I completely understand. Obviously, if I was in your shoes, I'd want to be able to get as much money as I can possible. And certainly, you understand that it does need a lot of work. However, when we buy the property, we're buying it as is, so you don't have to worry about doing any of the work, because rather than you say getting the 100,000 that you want, but you have to go ahead and make the repairs to the property, and you got to wait the 6 months and everything else. We'll go ahead and buy it as is. We'll buy it as is, and that way you don't have to deal with any of that. And so then now you've covered that. And now you have another option for you to then go back to them and say, so tell me, what would be the best price you could do if we could buy the property in as is condition? And they say, well, you know, best I can do would be 80,000. And I say, you know what, I really appreciate the fact that you've, you know, given me a discount, and I know that you're working, you're trying to make this deal work, and I'm trying to make this deal work too. And you know, one of the other challenges that I'm having is that, you know, a lot of these other sellers, they're offering us their deals because the market is depressed, or offering us this deals at X. And so, you know, I could only push this so far, because otherwise my underwriting department is going to say, you know what, just go buy that other house down the street. And so, and again, you know, the benefit that you have with me is that rather than, and again, you can get that number that you want. It's going to take you 3 to 4 months, because you got to put it on the market with a real estate agent. You got to do X, Y, Z. And so then now you're telling them about the fact that, hey, you can do it faster. The first objection was about the fact that you're buying an as-is condition. That now you're covering the fact that now you have the ability to buy quicker, and now they don't have to wait all that time in order to be able to get the deal done. And so then now, but rather than saying that all in one time, like just rapid fire, you are allowing the conversation to go back and forth and back and forth and come back to them. Now that, according to Jordan Belfort, is a process called looping. Looping, looping. So the way looping works is that if you consider this being the timeline of the conversation, looping is, and let's say that each of these points are a point of where you make the offer here and the guy says no. You have a subsequent point that you make, and maybe he goes down to 85. And then you make another point, and maybe you get a concession of 80. And you continue. There's different points on the line at which now you're going to get, somewhere on this line, you're going to get to the money part where they say yes and they agree to a price. However, though, you're not going to go ahead and try and barrel through all at one time to get to this spot. What you're going to do is you're going to give your objection. You're going to overcome an objection. You're going to have your rebuttal here. And then what's going to happen is let's say you tell them about property in as-is condition, and then now they say no. And then what ends up happening is that then you actually loop back. You go back to this place, because this place was the point of the conversation. You said, you know, I understand you want to get a lot of money for, you know, you want to get as much as you can for the property, blah, blah, blah. And then now you cover this point. So then what happens is that now you're able to then, as you go through the conversation, now you move on to this point. And now you're going to cover the fact that you can buy the property and close on it quickly. However, they're going to say no. But what's going to happen is that you're going to continue to push the conversation, and maybe you'll end up here. So what happens with looping is that you're touching on these points one by one. And as you do so, you're going to generate resistance. At some point, they're going to resist your response here. But rather than you trying to force yourself and trying to push yourself and prove your point, what you're doing is you're backtracking. You're backtracking, and every time you backtrack, you're going to be at a point of the conversation that's going to be a little bit closer and a little bit closer. So you're inching your way a little bit closer each and every step of the way until you get to that final number, where at that point then now you have to make a decision. Is that a deal that I can go ahead and put on the contract, that I can do something with? And that's where you get to. And so that's how I handle negotiations. This is the framework. And I like frameworks like this because when you look at this, you can clearly see a roadmap. You can know, rather than you being 100%, confused about, like, I have no idea where this conversation is going, you would have a complete framework of exactly every single rebuttal, every single way that you're going to approach that conversation, every single thing you're going to say. You're prepared for every single instance of resistance that the seller is going to have when you're dealing with them. And now what that's going to do, it's going to give you the confidence you need to know that I can get on the phone, because now I know exactly what to say. I know exactly how to say it. I know when to say it. I know how to say it. I know that I need to sound Sharpest Attack, figure of authority, enthusiastic as hell, and I have everything I need to say in here. I have it verbalized. I know it like the back of my hands. I could wake up in the middle of the night, wake up in a cold sweat from a dream or a nightmare, and I'd just be like talking like as if I was talking with a seller all day long, and that's how I know that stuff inside and out. So that's the importance of scripts. People don't believe in scripts. I believe that you need to have all these rebuttals All right, you need to be able to write them down, and you need to be able to know them, like as if, like you need to, I don't know how else to say it. You just need to memorize them. Now, some people might argue that, you know what, Chris, I want to sound natural. I don't want to sound scripted. And so that's why I don't want to memorize anything. And I tell you that that's just crazy talk. Why? Because think about a film. Think about a TV show. When you're listening to them, they sound so natural. Why do they sound so natural? Because they have their scripts memorized to the point where now they no longer have to think about their scripts. They can think about the emotion and how they're saying that. And so if you don't know what to say, then you're not listening to the seller. You're kind of halfway listening to them, but in the back of your mind, you're trying to think of, what am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? How about if they say this? How about if they say that? But if you already have all that stuff in your mind, if you already have that memorized, then you are going to be paying closer attention. You're going to be able to speak with them better, because now you're no longer thinking about what you're going to say next, but you're thinking about what they're saying, and you are really focused and attentive to every single part of their conversation. You could tell the nuances of how they're coming across and what they're saying and their emotions and everything else. And that's when you get to that process where now you become a tremendous salesperson. And that is my framework here. And listen, the reason I wanted to do this video is because so many people get stuck on leads. I want to generate motivated sellers. I want to generate motivated sellers. But many times it's like, you could be generating the most amazing leads right now, but you suck on the phone. You're just horrible on the phone, and you need to get better, because either A, you're not getting results, or two, you're getting some results, but man, you could do so much better if you could get better on the phone. And that's my message for today. Okay? Can't close a door, can't close a deal. All right, here's what I want you to do next. Number one, subscribe. If you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe, because that way you can make sure that you don't miss a video. That's number one. Number two, in the link, in the description, there's a link for a training that I have that teaches you how I go about doing virtual wholesaling using my digital bandit sign technique. It's using Facebook ads for motivated sellers and how to be able to do deals without ever having to personally meet with the buyers or the sellers or look at any properties. And you can do it from anywhere in the world. And last but not least, make me a comment. Tell me, Chico, this was good. Or tell me, Chico, you could have done better. Either way, just tell me. And you can call me Chico. All my friends call me Chico. Nobody calls me by my first name. All right? I'll talk to you later.